Hello and welcome to our new topic, consumer buying behavior. I am Mamurjan Rahimov, lecturer at Webster University in Tashkent. This recording has become possible thanks to UNESCO Unitwin Open Courseware Open Education Resource Initiative. These are today's learning outcomes. Consumer behavior, in general, um, there's in business schools around the world, there's a separate separate course called consumer behavior. But today we're going to learn this as just one topic. But I'm just saying that this is very important uh, aspect of marketing, understanding consumer buying behavior, because in essence, we are, as marketers, we're all trying to influence consumer buying behavior. So here are some definitions. So buying behavior is the decision process and actions of people involved in buying and using products. For every marketer, it's very important to understand this buying behavior. When we say consumer buying behavior, these are people buying items or services for final consumption for their personal or household use, not for business. Later, we're going to have a special topic on business buying behavior, which pretty much applies most of the same concepts, but it differs because the decision making is much more complex. So, as I said, it's very important to understand buying behavior to find out what satisfies buyers, what makes them upset, so that you can make proper marketing decisions. A simple trip to a supermarket consists of complex buying behavior that consumers undertake. So, consumer buying decision process is divided into 5 distinct stages. We're going to look at each one of them today, starting from problem recognition, information search, evaluation of alternatives, purchase, and post-purchase evaluation as well, because as we know, marketing does not end after selling the product. So we are interested in making this sustainable. We are interested in making customers come back again and again. That's why it's very important to understand what people think about your product or service even after you have sold this product or service to them. So this diagram shows the customer decision making process 5 and possibly influences on the process. Let's take a look at the problem recognition stage. It occurs when a buyer becomes aware of a difference between a desired state and actual condition. So I would like to give you one example. In America, I learned that cast iron pots are um, very good for health because iron is needed in our body. So every time you cook something in this cast iron pots, some amount of iron is absorbed in our body, and which is good for our health. Unlike the aluminum pots that still most people in Uzbekistan use. So when I returned from United States, I promoted this among Uzbeks, and many of my friends have actually switched to uh, this kind of pots. And this by promoting this to them and explaining their benefits of this using this kind of pot, I help them to recognize the problem, right? That they've been using, something which is not very conducive for their health. At the information search stage, after recognizing the problem, consumers seek to satisfy their need. They seek out product information. If they know something about the product, they have internal search. But also they engage in external search where they use personal contacts, internet, books, and other sources to find out more about the product. So in case of the cast iron, I forwarded some information about that in the form of videos and articles. So many of my friends were convinced and quickly switched to healthier way of cooking. So once you have several alternatives, you have to look. You have to evaluate between several alternatives, and that's where advertising comes in handy. This is just one of recent advertising campaigns of Coca-Cola. So they're offering different choices, right? Coca-Cola Zero, Coca-Cola Life, so uh, Diet Coke. So they're trying to make people choose Coca-Cola over other drinks at the evaluation stage. So in the purchase stage, the buyer chooses the product or brand to be bought. And oftentimes, product availability may influence the decision. Yes, so if you advertise and people decide to buy your product but they don't find it in the store, they might actually switch to nearest alternative and they choose the seller. I actually, we have several uh, Korzinka stores near our house, so we choose one or the over the other because assortment is pretty much the same, but their customer service may influence choice of the seller or the distance. So and then negotiating the terms of the transaction. This is more in marketplace. Makes the actual purchase or terminates the process, right? So the stage, uh, important decisions are made. And another thing that many companies overlook is post-purchase evaluation stage. After the purchase, the buyer evaluates the product. Does its actual performance meet expected levels? They expect from your advertising, from packaging, and from price they pay, they expect certain performance from your product. So after they evaluate this performance of the product against the expectations, they become either satisfied or dissatisfied. Cognitive dissonance happens uh, when people feel uncomfortable, about they're not sure if they made the right decision about buying the product. Maybe they overpaid for the product. Also, we have to know that different products have different levels of involvement. Generally, all the products can be divided into high involvement and low involvement products. So, high involvement products are, this also includes high involvement services. So, these are expensive. They influence us in a great way. For example, healthcare. You choose your doctor very carefully. You choose your dentist very carefully, right? When you're buying a house or a car, you take a lot of time and you spend a lot of energy to choose these products and services. Low involvement products are, things that are less expensive and have less risk. For example, you might buy a T-shirt, and if it fades after the first wash, it's not a big deal. It's not expensive. Many grocery items like salt, sugar, flour, they're low involvement products. But companies have been, a lot of marketers have been trying to switch low involvement products into high involvement products by differentiating their products, by making their by improving their products. For example, we buy, and if you go to supermarket today, there are in a big supermarkets there are about 10 kinds of salt, and the most expensive ones are several times more expensive than the basic salt. But those salts, they are from they package sea salt, and it's It's very fine and it's iodized, enriched in minerals. So, suddenly a low involvement product becomes a high involvement product, and I'm willing to spend more time and more money to, look for it and to buy it. So, an involvement could be enduring involvement, ongoing long-term involvement with the product, or temporary or dynamic involvement resulting from particular set of circumstances. So here's a table summarizing uh, consumer decision making based on uh, product cost, search effort, time spent, and brand preference. So we can have different kinds of responses. Routinized response, limited problem solving, extended problem solving, and impulse buying. You probably heard about this one. We're going to look at each one separately. So routinized response behavior is when you're buying things that you know very well. They're low-cost items, and you buy them frequently, such as soft drinks, cereal, or butter, right? Limited decision making. It's a consumer decision making process when purchasing products occasionally or needing information about an unfamiliar brand in a familiar brand category. For example, the same butter, but if you don't find your favorite butter brand, you might actually spend more time reading at the package, comparing it with other alternatives, other brands. Extended decision making is required for things such as cars, homes, or university education, right? By the way, you probably know college education. College is considered in the U.S. as higher education, so you are college students, university students. You probably took quite a lot of time thinking, consulting which university to choose, and came to Webster. So Coca-Cola again, soft drinks such as Coca-Cola, low involvement products because they're inexpensive and purchased frequently. When buying soft drinks, consumers usually employ routinized response behavior. And impulse buying, there are a lot of things, you know, when you go to the cashier's checkout place, you can see a lot of small items that people they especially place there because people are most likely to buy them on impulse with little planning and not much consideration for cost. Things like chewing gums, batteries, and small accessories and stuff like that. This is also, for companies producing these kind of products, it has this whole different science to how to make people buy something on impulse. And packaging and pricing plays here a very important role. So, consumer buying decision process and possible influence on the process. So, another influence could be situational influences on buying decision, such as physical surroundings, mood of the consumer may affect his or her shopping, social surroundings, time, dimension, and purchase reason. So situational influences result from circumstances, time, and location that affect consumer buying decision process. Can influence the decision-making process at any stage. Five categories of situational influences are physical surroundings, social surroundings, time perspective, reason for purchase, and buyer's momentary mood and condition. Psychological influences also have many kinds: perception, lifestyle, motives, attitudes, personality, and self-concept. So we have 6 categories of psychological influences, and let's take a look at each one of them separately. Perception. This is a very important concept in marketing, the process of selecting, organizing, and interpreting information inputs to produce meaning, right? Information inputs are where we receive information from all our senses by for example, expensive accessories, computers use heavier, more high quality plastic, right? So also already, by just touching the material, you can feel that this is a quality product. Our hearing, our vision help us to make sense of what we see. This is perception. So perception itself has some important related concepts to perception are selective exposure, selective distortion, and selective retention. So selective exposure is when some inputs are selected to reach awareness and others are not. For example, you might trust some websites or some people when getting certain information, when learning about certain products. Selective distortion is when you disregard, twist information of sources which you do not believe. And selective retention, you only tend to retain certain things that fit uh, what you already know about the product or service. Uh, Motives are very important part of understanding consumer behavior. There's a whole science about learning consumer motives. You're probably familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Here it is. So it's like a pyramid. At the foundation, people are concerned about satisfying their physiological needs, like food, shelter, and clothing. And then only after satisfying these basic needs, they're able to move up into safety needs, then social needs, esteem needs, and at the very top of the pyramid is self-actualization when people start doing you know different charity things, exploring the world, going to the top of the mountains and stuff like that, and trying to get more publicity. This is a lot of people after satisfying all the lower levels of needs, they spend more time and energy on this on satisfying these needs. Let's pause it here, and when we come back, we will talk about learning.